World War II was fought between 1939 and 1945. The war was fought between the Allied powers of the United States, the USSR, the United Kingdom, and France, and they fought against the Axis powers of Italy, Japan, and Nazi Germany. This brutal war was then followed by hundreds of World War II films, including the ones we will be comparing today, Dunkirk and Casablanca. We'll start with Casablanca. Casablanca is a 1942 World War II film directed by Michael Curtiz. The movie starts at the beginning of World War II in 1941. The Moroccan coastal city of Casablanca attracts people from all over the world, especially Nazi Germany, hoping to escape the war and get to Lisbon and eventually America. Most of these people find their way to Rick's American Cafe, which is a nightclub and restaurant owned by Rick Blaine, played by Humphrey Bogart. In the beginning of the film, Rick lives by the mantra, "I stick my neck out for nobody," although later we learn he once had enough drive and idealism to put himself at risk to fight fascism. This drive was destroyed by his former love interest, Ilsa Lunn, who is played by Ingrid Bergman. Ilsa shows up with her husband, Victor Laszlo, played by Paul Henrid. Laszlo was a famous Czech leader who escaped from a Nazi concentration camp. Laszlo and Ilsa come to Rick's Cafe for transit papers to escape the war to Lisbon and eventually America. Initially, Rick refuses, but in the end, he regains his desire to resist fascism and fight oppression, despite losing the love of his life. The next film is Dunkirk. Dunkirk is based on the unbelievable true story of the evacuation of almost 300,000 stranded men belonging to the Allied forces upon being surrounded by the Germans. Following the Battle of France, the Allied forces were forced to retreat to the northern French coast by the German resistance. The stranded soldiers then got rescued from the beaches and harbors of a small French town called Dunkirk. The film, directed by Christopher Nolan, is organized into 3 consecutive storylines written on the screen: the mole, the sea, and the air. The mole begins with Tommy, played by Finn Whitehead, a British Army private. He befriends Gibson, played by Aneurin Barnard. They are denied entry on the rescue ship and befriend Alex, who is played by Harry Styles. The ships are sunk and Gibson eventually loses his life. Tommy and Alex are then rescued by a civilian boat and eventually return home, where they are revered as heroes. The Sea begins with a civilian boat run by Mr. Dawson, which is played by Mark Rylance. He rescues drowning soldiers and pilots, as seen in the air sequence. The air sequence depicts 3 British Spitfires attempting to provide support for the trapped forces at Dunkirk. Ferrier, who is played by Tom Hardy, is the only pilot to make it to Dunkirk, where German soldiers capture him as a prisoner of war. There is no introduction to the characters and no closure about their fate. No history prior to or after the evacuation. The film is about survival, just a story told vividly and simply. Now to compare Dunkirk and Casablanca. One theme present in both films is the theme of a faceless enemy. In Dunkirk, although they are fighting Germans, you never see German soldiers or generals until the very end when Ferrier is captured. In Casablanca, although everyone is trying to seek refuge from the Nazis and the war, you never see German soldiers or generals fighting, except the few majors carrying out Nazi orders related to transit letters. The invisible enemy symbolizes the darkness and fear that veiled the world during World War II. Although Nazis weren't always present, their effect and influence was felt everywhere, and their actions affected everyone, including those on entirely different continents. Another common theme is the theme of time. In Dunkirk, every action performed is a time-sensitive one, from the sinking of ships to the crashing of airplanes. In addition, throughout the entire film, a ticking is played in the background, the ticking of a clock or a stopwatch. In Casablanca, many events are time-sensitive as well, including the plane taking off with Ilsa and Laszlo, or the separation of Rick and Ilsa due to the imminent German invasion. This symbolizes the importance of time and perfect timing within World War II. Everything was time-sensitive in order to achieve success. In conclusion, both Casablanca and Dunkirk exemplify life during World War II. Casablanca depicts life in sanctuary cities such as Casablanca, Morocco, and Dunkirk depicts life on the battlefield, such as the war occurring in Dunkirk, France. Both films are iconic, timeless films that communicate the struggle, issues, and malevolence plaguing the world during World War II.